there, and welcome back to 355 Code. Today we'll be trying to tackle another Brainteaser challenge, something that you might see in an interview. And today's challenge will be to draw a circle and calculate the area of that circle. So let's get started, and we'll start with the first part, which will be drawing out the circle. And to draw things using plain JavaScript as we are here, we need to use the canvas element. So let's start out with creating a canvas, and this will be so just document.createElement, and then the type of element will be canvas. And the next thing we need to do in terms of the canvas is give it height and width. So let's just say we'll start it off with just 100 pixels. We might change this later on. And same for width. Next we need to create a context. If you're not sure what this is, I recommend reading up the documentation for Canvas and how to use it. And it's pretty much just telling us what kind of canvas we're going to be using, and in this case it's going to be a 2D canvas with a simple 2D drawing. And now we want to draw a circle. So in order to draw a circle using Canvas, we're going to be using something called arc. An arc basically draws a curved line from one point to another point according to some parameters that we pass into the arc function. And before the arc, we need to declare that we're beginning path, and after we define the arc, we need to use the stroke method. So the way it'll work is like this: context.beginPath. Okay. And then here we'll have the context.arc, and this is where we're going to have to pass in some parameters, and we're going to end with context.stroke so that we actually draw out our stroke. And just right before this, over here, I don't want to forget to append the canvas to our body, because otherwise we won't see it or anything that we draw on it. So in terms of the arc, if you want to understand a little bit more, again, documentation is the place to do that. But basically what we need to do is we need to pass on several parameters here. And let's just take a look together at the documentation briefly. So in terms of the parameters, so the first will be the x and y coordinates of the center of the circle. So let's just give this, let's say for now, 50-50, just so that it's not right up here on the corner or something like that. And we know that it'll kind of fit into our canvas that we defined. And the next thing that we're going to want to do is give the circle a radius. So let's give it a smaller radius, let's say 20. And later on we're going to change this all so that we have some variables here instead of these hard numbers. But just for now, so we can see that we're actually managing to draw a simple circle, let's just select some numbers. And then we're going to want the starting angle, and here the documentation tells us that 0 is at the 3 o'clock position of the arc circle. So basically, and you'll see that in one moment when we actually draw an arc, and we're going to have an ending angle, and this is all in radians. And in terms of transferring between degrees and radians, so I'm just going to write this right up here on the top so we have it. So basically radians equals to pi, so we're going to use math.pi for that, and then divided by 180, and then times degrees. Okay, so that's going to be our conversion method for radians to degrees and vice versa. And basically here we want to give it a radians value. So let's say we want to start at 0 and we want to go until 90 degrees. So let's just copy this over here. And instead of degrees, I'm just going to write 90. So let's run this code and see what we get. Okay, so we don't have anything showing yet, so let's try and do some simple debugging and figure out where our problem might be. Let's take a look. Are we okay, so this is optional in terms of counterclockwise and clockwise, so that shouldn't be what is causing our problem. Let's try. Okay, so I think I found my mistake. So here I gave it a string to define the height and width. So this would be correct if we were using, let's say, canvas.style. But in this case, we're just tapping into the height property. So let's just, and this should just be a plain number. So, and this will be good for us later on because in this case, it'll be a little easier to use integers than strings. And let's try running that one more time. And still no go. So let's take another look and see where our problem might be. We're starting at 0, we're ending at 90. We have context, begin stroke. Okay, let's try adding in here just like a false, let's say, just for the clockwise, counterclockwise. No, that was not it. So after a minute of searching, I found the bug, typo. So the stroke is a function, so you need to close it with parentheses and run, and we have our arc. And you can see, as we saw in the documentation, it starts from 3 o'clock and then goes down to 6 o'clock, and that's basically 0 to 90. And if I were to change this here to, let's say, 180, then we'd have half a circle. And if we change this here just to 360, then we will have a full circle. So first part of the challenge complete. Okay, we drew a circle, and you know, we can see it, and now we just want to calculate the area of this circle. So to calculate the area, we will just use just plain old geometry. So let's declare a new variable, and this will be area. And this area, to calculate the area of the circle, if you're not sure, you can feel free to look it up. No shame in that. And it's basically pi times the radius squared. So what we're going to need is math.pi, and this is going to be multiplied by the power. Okay, so to do powers of certain numbers, we can use math.pow, and here we're going to put in our radius, which here is 20, and we're going to bring that up to the power of 2, and we can just console.log area. But I wouldn't say that our code is finished just yet because we have some issues. One is that it's all hard-coded, so I had to pass the radius directly into this formula as a number. So really what we should be doing is we should have a variable radius up here, and this radius can be anything we want, and we can even just use, let's say, a prompt, enter a radius, okay? And then when we run our code, so we'll be prompted to enter a radius, just what we need to remember to do is to wrap this in a number, because prompt will return a string, and that won't really work later on for us. And this radius, so one thing we can do that can be kind of cool is to calculate a real radius, let's call it, because our initial radius will be in pixels. But if we want to get the area, for example, of the circle, pixels might not be relevant for us. We might want to get in, for example, centimeters squared or meters squared or something like that. So I'm going to use just centimeters for this calculation, but you can really convert the pixels to whatever you want just based on the size of a pixel, and we'll be using 0.026 as the size. I'm just going to write it here, size of pixel in centimeters is 0.026, and basically real radius will be the radius of the circle in centimeters. And then we can also use this information to pass values to all of the other parts of our code. So for example, for canvas.height, we'll, let's say, want to make it 3 times the radius. That way our canvas will always be big enough for this circle. And you can see here I'm still using the pixel radius because that's what we need for all the beginning of our code. And here, in terms of the start point, then we can just pretty much do, let's say, radius and radius, and we're just testing it out now. We can see we might make some changes later on, and radius, of course, will be radius. That's kind of what we're basing this whole variable on, and these will remain the same because we're drawing a full circle. So let's try out our code again. So we're prompted, let's say I choose a radius of 100, and now you can see we have a very large circle. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to add, let's say, 10 pixels to each of these, just so that our circle kind of doesn't get cut off at the edges there. So let's try again, 50, and great. Okay, so we added a lot of functionality here because we can actually draw circles of different sizes now, and we just have a lot more flexibility in our code. And the last thing we want to do is to calculate the area using our real radius. And then when we run this code, so we can give in pixels, and then we will get that it's 6.28 something centimeters squared. And we could have reversed this, like we could have made the input in centimeters. I can even add here, let's say, in pixels or something. But we won't get too complex here. And the last thing I'll do is just change our console to something a little more clear, a slightly more clear message. So I'm going to be using this form of text, and basically this will allow me to these slanted quotation marks or colons will allow me to put variables directly within the text. So I'll just write this circle has a diameter of, and then here I can just put variables right in using $ and squiggly brackets. And here just, so diameter is twice the radius, so I'm just going to do real radius times 2. And this is going to be in centimeters, as I mentioned before. And an area of, and then here we're also just going to plug in that variable of area. And this is centimeters squared. So let's just write squared. Okay, it's not really squared, but you can go and look for how to write the tiny little 2 on top. And let's try running our code again. So I'm going to enter here 50. This is a circle with a diameter of 2.6 centimeters and an area of 6.28, etc. Centimeters. So you can add more functionality if you want, play around, try different things, add an alert after the console. But this is the basic way to solve this Brainteaser. We drew a circle and we calculated the area of the circle. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can see more videos like this as well as other JavaScript tutorials on our channel. See you next time.